Everybody, I'm Grandmaster Ben Finegold here with another 5 Minutes with Ben, or as I like to call it, 10 Minutes with Ben. And we're doing World Championship recap. Today was Game 5, and Gukesh had white, Ding had black, and let's jump into the game. Gukesh returned to e4, which he played in Game 1, and Ding played e6, which he also played in Game 1. And we had a surprise on move 3, because we're getting surprises pretty early in this match. Early in the game. So after d4, d5, Gukesh played a move that is not played very often at the top level, especially in the French defense. Played the exchange variation, e takes d5. In Game 1, Gukesh played knight c3 and ended up losing that game in the end. So he played exchange variation, ed5, ed5, which I play sometimes with white. And I play knight f3, knight f6. And here I usually play c4, although I have played bishop d3 in the past. And here, Ding played an aggressive move instead of playing something solid like, black playing bishop d6, getting a symmetrical position. It's about equal. Black played c5, so Ding wants to seize the initiative. White played c3, c4, attacking the bishop. Bishop drops back to c2. That's why white played c3. And bishop d6. So now, if white castles, then black will castle. So Gukesh tried to get an endgame advantage, although the engine doesn't agree. Played queen e2 check, queen e7. Black can also play bishop back to e7, but, no reason not to play queen e7. And I guess if white doesn't want to trade queens, could play bishop e3, but bishop's not very good on e3, and white didn't play queen e2 to not trade queens. And I guess most lower-rated players would take with the bishop, which is perfectly fine. But taking with the king is probably better. That's what he did, because now black can quickly play rook e8, challenge the e-file, and drop his king back to f8. Bishop's better on d6 than on e7. So I like king takes. I think this is theory, too. Okay, castles, rook e8, rook e1 check, king f8. Traded rooks. And already this looks like the game's going to end in a draw because they've traded queens, they've traded rooks, the pawn structure's relatively symmetrical, and there's not really any weaknesses for anybody. Okay, white played bishop g5, knight b d7, knight b d2. Ding kicked the bishop with h6, bishop h4. Now f4 square is tender. It would be nice if a knight could go there, like knight f8 to g6 or e6, or, as was played in the game, knight h5, because the knight really likes the f4 square. White took over the e-file, rook e1 check, king stepped over to f8. And, in this position, eventually black's going to have an advantage, because black can play knight f4, black can play knight d3, black can move this knight out of the way and get the bishop to some good square, and the rook can challenge the e-file. So, I'd rather have black if my knight was on f4. So, Gukesh took matters into his own hands. He played g4. I think that proves Matt Larson is one of Gukesh's seconds at the event, or maybe it proves it's not. And black played knight f4, as I was espousing earlier. G5. Oh, no, he played bishop g3. This pins the knight, but it's not a scary pin because white can't attack the knight anymore. There's no way for white to move their pieces in such a way that we can put pressure on that knight. So black played knight b6, which allows the bishop to be developed, and it also attacks the pawn on g4. And in case white plays b3, the knight's well placed to defend the c-pawn, and if they trade on c4, the knight could go to d5 later. So knight on b6 is pretty good. Occasionally, the knight can go to a4 and attack the b-pawn, once this bishop is off of c2. Okay, so first things first, white's g-pawn is attacked. So g5, good move. hg, knight takes g5. Material still equal. White has two isolated pawns on the king side, but they don't matter very much. Bishop d7. And in this position, the engine just says it's equal, and it wants white to play knight f1, knight to e3. e3 is an excellent square for the knight. Controls all these squares and puts pressure on d5, controls the f5 square. And then knight on d2 is not really, going anywhere. But Gukesh decided to bring his knight back. He didn't like his knight on g5. He played knight back to f3. Rook e8. It's looking pretty equal. And in this position, after takes, Gukesh played a bad move. He should take with the rook, and the engine says this is all zeros. It says nobody's better. But he took with the pawn. Now it says black is much better. And Ding played the correct move, knight to d3, which threatens everything. That threatens the b2 pawn, the rook on e1, the pawn on e5 is weak. So we have to capture. And obviously, if black loses this pawn for nothing, then that's not good. However, as Ding has correctly figured out, that ain't going to happen. My knight has c4, my knight has a4, putting pressure here. And if worse comes to worse and my pawn is being attacked on d3, I can play bishop f5 and defend my pawn, and you can't attack it anymore. But I think it's important that the bishop on c2 is gone and the knight has all these juicy squares now. Okay, so white played f3, never play f3. White wants to get their king in. The engine says knight a4 is good for black and knight c4 is good for black. The engine slightly prefers knight a4, and then after rook b1, saving the pawn, we can play f6, attacking this pawn, and we try to get our rook down to the e2 square. And the engine says something like black is up 0.7. So it's opposite color bishops, but good winning chances for black. Ding chose another way to play, knight c4, which forces white into trading the knights because the knight's attacked and the b-pawn's attacked. Knight's great on c4. And this gives black a protected passed d-pawn. And although this position's probably drawn, black is the one playing for the win. Okay, and after rook e4, Gukesh attacks the c4 pawn, and Ding made a move that gives away most of his winning chances. What Ding should do is protect his c4 pawn. He can do that with either rook c8 or bishop e6. It's both fine. And again, the engine says black's up 0.5, 0.6, so good winning chances for black. White's going to saunter their king up. That's why they played f3. And, white's just going to chill and say, I'm going to block your d pawn, and what else are you going to do? So, probably more likely white draws than loses, but black has winning chances. So then he played bishop c6. This sets a devilish trap, which I'm sure Ding was attracted to, but unfortunately, bishop c6 throws away most of the winning chances. The idea is, if white blunders and takes on c4, black plays rook d8, and all of a sudden black is winning. Black's threatening d2, d1, and if the engine plays bishop f4 and gives the bishop away, and obviously black is winning there. And the main point is, if you play rook d4 and we trade on d4, you can't stop my d pawn. It's too far advanced. Okay, Gukesh didn't fall for rook takes c4, losing to rook d8. He just played rook d4. Now white's in the drawing zone because white is stopping the d pawn completely. The c pawn is weak. My king's coming up, and my rook's better than your rook. Rook on d4 is great. Okay, so Ding took on f3, king f2. Now the king is close to the d pawn. So after the bishop saves itself, we can take the c pawn. d2 doesn't work because of king at e2. I'm sorry, not king e2. King e2 loses to bishop b5. It doesn't work because of rook d4. Then after, you can't play rook d8 because I take it. Although I was going to play rook d8. I was going to try. And then you just lose the pawn. So that doesn't work. Okay, so after rook takes c4, Ding played rook d8, which threatens to win immediately. And rook d4 was played. And this is just a drawn opposite bishop ending. And it's funny, Ding gave up his pawn on d3, even though he didn't have to, because either way's a draw, and he didn't want to waste his time. So, I mean, if I was black, I would play bishop e4. If you take it, I queen. And if you don't take it, the bishop can, hop back here and have my d-pawn. Of course, problem with this is white can play d5, and white has a passed d-pawn also. So instead of thinking, and then they could trade the d-pawns and agree to a draw. But instead of thinking, black just played king e6, g6, and white's a pawn up, but it doesn't matter. White can't legally win. There's no way to win. Perfect blockade in the center. And black just moves back and forth. Black can play bishop c6 to d5. That could be the next 25 moves. But instead, they repeated this way. And game was drawn by repetition and agreement and so forth. And the fact that they got to move 40. That might have been even more important. So yeah, there's no winning chances for either side. Extra pawn is meaningless. And pretty well played game. Another not so good opening from Gukesh with white, getting worse position in the middle game, end game, and then having to struggle to draw. And Ding could have played more incisively, trying to win, but drawing very easily with black is a good result. And if anyone was going to win that game, it was going to be Ding. Okay, game 6 is tomorrow. Ding will have white against Gukesh. The match is tied 2.5, 2.5. Thanks for watching 5 Minutes with Ben, or 10 Minutes with Ben, or 12 Minutes with Ben. This is the World Championship recap. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment. That helps the channel out a lot. And I'll see you guys next time with more World Championship recap. Bye, everybody.